right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Star Wars Weekly Review. As usual, you got your guy, DadaLorian, below me, Mr. Star Wars Guide, and our guest today is Mr. Sal, but you probably know him and seen him as many different faces. I know him as Boba Fett and Darth Maul. But Sal, can you, hello, my friend. Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So today is our Boba Fett episode. And before we get into a little bit of history of that, and I'm saying your name right, Sal, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sal, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, man, and your journey on TikTok?
So I started on TikTok in like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for a while now. Cosplaying wise, I started when I was like 15. So
wow.
Definitely way before TikTok was around. I was already donning the Boba Fett armor.
Yeah.
But that's where I mostly strive with nowadays. I mean, cosplay has become such a large part of my own life. So
yeah,
I've incorporated it with TikTok and a bunch of other things going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been following your page probably since I joined TikTok, because the way it started for me, I wanted to look for people like I could duet with, and create fun stuff. And I came across your page. I was like, oh man, this guy's got everything on there, So can you tell me a little bit about, because you said you've been cosplaying since you were a kid, right? Mm-hmm. The stuff that you have do you make all of this stuff? Where does it all come about? What's the process like?
So for the most part, yeah, I pretty much make everything.
Wow.
Some things though, I don't take credit for because they are just ludicrous with how they're made. But pretty much, I mean, you've seen my Commander Cody. That's fully 3D printed. That was all made here. Wow. And a lot of stuff, even like the Master Chief, which isn't even Star Wars related, is all made by us. For Boba Fett, the paint job was us. We had to do that one, which that was its own journey on its own case because it's so complex. But yeah, no, for the most part, everything is made by us. I don't really dive too much into the soft parts like fabrics and stuff, but I have dabbled a little into it.
Man, that is so cool. Now, tell me a little bit about, because I know it's Dented Helmet Cos, correct? Tell me a little bit about the business aspect and I guess a piece of that journey and kind of what you guys do.
So the name itself comes from the 501st attachment, which is the dentedhelmet.com.
Yep.
And so they are, that's where you go if you want to do anything Boba Fett or bounty hunter related in general. Like that's their whole domain.
Yep.
And that's really where the name for my TikTok account sprung up from, because I'm not that creative, but
right.
But no, yeah, so like I got my early years started on the dentedhelmet.com and going through that to get Boba Fett started and everything, and that's just my first inspiration for the name for TikTok, really.
Man,
so
go ahead.
I have like little ties with the 501st. I'm not officially part of them or anything, but I do have a lot of ties with them to where I could really join at any point if I wanted to at this point.
Yeah. Now, and I know very minimal things about 501st. I at least from what I know from exterior point of view, it seems to be a process and very I would say nitpicky about being in. Can you share a little bit about like that experience of like for those who are on the outside looking in? Could you give like an experience or explanation of like, hey, this is what you should, be mindful of if you're looking, to join 501st?
It's a research process. It definitely is. The 501st at least is helpful with it because on their main website, they have like reference images for everything. So, and they go pretty detailed into how everything is handled about each part of the suit and stuff. When you get into specific characters like, Boba Fett, Commander Cody, there's websites dedicated to them to tell you like, oh, this is how it's supposed to look. And here's how the paint job is done and stuff. The best part about going forward nowadays with a lot of, smaller companies bringing up on Etsy and stuff is a lot of them will specifically state inside their bio or like in the item description, like this does meet 501st regulation. So you at least know this part is accurate.
Yeah.
But in cases it can be pretty up there.
Yeah.
Boba Fett's armor, especially, I mean, we've seen it. It's got dents and scratches everywhere,
Yeah.
and they measure out that stuff, so you know exactly where the scratches are supposed to be and stuff by like
Yeah.
almost millimeters in some cases. So
Yep.
it,
Yeah.
it's pretty ludicrous.
No, I mean it's really cool, and I think a lot of the folks that I've seen have been pretty, screen, accurate when it comes to that. Do you plan on joining 501st anytime soon, or is it like kind of just a thought, like I could do it, but
It's kind of a thought. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I've definitely put thought into it. Like I could do it, but I just don't know if I have like the time to do it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
might be able to do like a handful of the events that they do, but not all of them. And
yeah,
I don't know. So it just comes down to a personal time kind of thing. If
yeah.
I could actually do this.
No, for sure, for sure. It's a commitment. A strange example I could use is like you know, I act outside of the cosplay, but I've done musical theater once, and I can tell you, like, it was a fun experience, but it was time consuming. You
Mm.
know, the amount of energy and practice that you have to put in versus like doing television and commercial type work. It's easy. You get one day in, you're in and you're out. You know what I mean? And you get way more money. But that's kind of an example. Is like it's more of like what you're willing to sacrifice in terms of your time. So I
Yeah.
totally get that for sure, for sure. Well, great, man. I'm glad to have you on it and talk cosplay stuff, talk Boba Fett. Star Wars guide. I know you're a big Boba Fett guy as well.
Yes.
I wanna and I hope you don't mind, Sal. I have your TikTok up. These are public images and videos, okay?
Yeah, you're good.
But Star Wars guide, can you talk a little bit just about, I guess now we're going to look at the book of Boba Fett. So, we're also talking about some of the predictions going into that show. And before we get into that, guide, can you talk a little bit about like history or your history with Boba Fett and kind of your excitement with the character?
So I was introduced to the original trilogy on VHS when I was very young. Of course, I loved Vader from the beginning, but
Yeah.
Boba Fett, once I started learning more about Star Wars, that's
Yeah.
where Fett comes into the picture. And of course, I wasn't a big fan of Django's armor, but when I saw Fett's armor, I really enjoyed it. And of course, I love the clones.
Mhm.
But a rundown of my history with him, I mean, I've loved him for a long time, but there was a pause when we all believed that he was dead. I still held that little shard of hope that like, hey, he's gonna make it. He's gonna survive. I think
Yeah.
there's a comic out there that shows that Dengar saves him.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's canon or legends, but I had that little shard of hope, but I didn't know. I wait until the facts come out because there's been rumors going around for years.
Yep.
So that magical moment, my wife can tell you, I almost blew out her
Yes.
eardrums when I just saw him. And on Tatooine with his robes on, I was like, this is crazy. There's no way this is happening. There's no way we're getting exactly what we wanted for this long
Right.
time, So I'm a big fan of his new armor, newly painted. No offense if you love the old paint to any of you guys, but I just love the change, and also the little detail on his helmet. I don't know which side, the left side or right side, but the color changed from I believe it was yellow to now it's like a deep orange or red, something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
And that was supposed, I guess yellow was for revenge, and now the red is like in honor of, so like in honor of his father. And now I don't know how he's going to be in the Book of Boba Fett, if he's going to be an evil bounty hunter again, or if he's maybe found some peace and just wants to just do his own thing. But
Yeah. Now you
yeah.
bring up some good points, man. Sal, what about you, man? For when obviously, early on, in the Mandalorian, we kind of, little hints were dropped like, oh yeah, we're pretty sure we're gonna see Boba. But when it happened, oh my God, when it happened, how did you feel like, and as being someone who, cosplays this character to the T, how did that make you feel like, oh my God, like he's back in canon?
Oh, I remember it vividly
Yeah.
because a group of us TikTokers, we would do Zoom calls prior to each episode.
Yeah.
We'd go and watch it and we'd come back and talk about it. And I was like freaking out. Like, because I same with Star Wars Guide. I've loved Boba for so long. And then there was that period in time which you're like, okay, is he gone forever now? Are we going to see him ever again? And then you bring him back in Mando and like you're shaking watching it.
Yes.
That slave one just comes in and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. So yeah, no, it was definitely almost like a journey going through those episodes, because I was like, the boy's back. Like, that's Boba.
Yeah. Yep. Oh man.
Beautiful
Well,
moment.
so now before we dive into theories about the Book of Boba Fett, I wanted to share. I mean, these are some things you guys probably already know, but since we're talking about Boba, let's get into it. So his first appearance was in 1978, which was the holiday special, which was directed by Steven Bender. Then obviously movie-wise, we've seen him in Empire Strikes Back, which was 1980, then Return of the Jedi, 1983, and then Attack of the Clones, 2002, Young Boba Fett, obviously with Daniel Logan, and then The Mandalorian, 2019 to 2020. And then Boba Fett actors and portrayals that maybe some of you guys did not know. Obviously, Jeremy Bulloch, the original, Tamira Morrison, and Daniel Logan as the younger Boba, and then D. Bradley Baker, Lego Star Wars. That name, D. Bradley Baker, man, he's everybody in Bad Batch, isn't he? Pretty much. And then Brecken Mayer, he was in the Robot Chicken version. So there's been many voices and faces of Boba Fett. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on when we're looking at like the history of Boba Fett. Number one, there would be, and you guys feel free to chime in on this too. Without Boba Fett, there would be no Mandalorians. There would be no Django. There would be none of that stuff. No Din Djarin, no Mandalorian, none of that. And it's so cool to think about, like, me and Guide, we had a buddy of mine that came on one of our shows, and we were talking about the Mandalorian, and we're talking about Boba Fett and kind of his past. Like, he really didn't do much back in the day. If you looked at the old movies, he was just this badass design of a bounty hunter, but he was in like a couple movies, and that was it. We didn't get to see him do too much. So seeing his return in the Mandalorian and the way he returned, God, it was glorious. But without him, there would be, no Mandalorians, no Din Djarin, none of that stuff. And I think it's just so unique. Like, it came from this original idea of like this super commando bounty hunter to now it's fleshed out to this expanded part. I don't want to say EU, but the universe itself has expanded, so to speak, with that initial idea. And the fact the guy's not even a Mandalorian, he's just a bounty hunter, simple man making his way through the galaxy, right? How does that make you guys feel as Boba fans? Like, if you think about that one initial idea, like without him, there wouldn't be the ripple effects. Guy, why don't you start it off?
Well, I think the greatest take that I got from The Mandalorian is that they made Django's story back to canon, because originally there was, I don't know when the comic came out. I watched something about a long time ago, but his comic showed, Django's life and how he came to be, and I guess his journey to where we saw him in what was it, episode 2? Yeah, Attack of the Clones. So now that story is canon, I just thought it was great. Now they can't go back on it. It's in a show. It's 100% concrete. But like you were saying, we don't see a lot of them. But for some reason, when you don't see a lot of a character that stands out, people just really attach to him. Really enjoy it. And at least for me, I just really enjoy his character right now. It seems to me he's on a spiritual journey. That's just my take. He's not going to be I guess some big bad villain in my opinion, but I could be wrong. But
Sal, what about you, man? What do you think in terms of that idea of like, with Boba, again, without him, there would be none of the ripple effects of what's been added into the Star Wars universe. As somebody who cosplays, and by the way, again, I'm going to go back to your page here soon. Sal is a badass. I love your cosplay, man. So I got to throw that out there, man. I got to throw it out there. But as someone who cosplays this character to the T, when you think about the history of Boba, how does that make you feel? Like, wow, that's really unique. Like, without this guy, there wouldn't be this initial idea. Elaborate on that.
So let me start by saying, do I believe Boba Fett is overrated? Yes. And I say that with passion because
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it, I don't think.
Yeah.
It adds weight to it because when you cosplay Boba Fett and you walk into a room with other Mandalorians, they stare at you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they know who you are, kind of,
Yep.
you know, and it has weight to it, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's a great feeling. I love it. That's why I love his entire storyline and everything associated with him, because it like I said, it just adds a lot of weight to the character.
Yeah.
Even though, like, you know, and that's the best part about him being overrated too, is that if I stroll up to a convention, I don't have to do anything. I could just stand there.
Right.
Boba Fett. And, you know, I just have to look cool and that's it. Maybe say 2 things and I'm done. So
yeah. Now you bring up an interesting point with that too. Like there is that interesting and there's that weight to his character. You know what I mean? And I'm sure as a cosplayer, like you said, like you probably feel that, you know, going out to conventions and whatnot, where it's like, yeah, you really don't have to do much because of the legacy of that character. It's just it's something, it's hard to explain, but I totally get what you're saying for sure. Now another thing that you mentioned, Boba is overrated, and there's nothing wrong with it. Now there is, and I'm gonna have you guys elaborate on this too as we get into theories. There's this Bo-Katan effect with Boba Fett, and let me explain what I'm saying here. You remember, like, when we all watched The Mandalorian, we were all so excited and like, oh my God, Bo-Katan, she's so cool. She's such a badass. Did we forget she was a terrorist? Like, did we forget, like, she used to be a mercenary and she was a part of Death Watch. You know what I mean? And now everyone was celebrating her. Like, she was a good guy. Like, mind you, she's changed. People change over time. I get that. But at the same time, I'm like, don't forget, this is who she used to be. Now, when I say Boba Fett, you know, when I think of him with this Bo-Katan effect, you know, he was the bad guy, even though he's still badass. He's this badass bounty hunter. He was the bad guy, you know, in the original trilogy. Now, Star Wars guy mentioned something too that I do agree with. I think, and part of that is just to the humanistic part of character development, where, yeah, the Boba we knew in, you know, Return of the Jedi at that moment was different than the one that we met, you know, in The Mandalorian. Time has changed, physically he's changed, you know, so I'm sure mentally he's probably gone through, you know, a different transition, you know, in his life, which I'm sure is what we're going to see. But, you know, also in The Mandalorian, it leaves you a bit conflicting, where you're like, at least that scene that we seen, you know, where he kills, you know, Fortuna, and he's, you know, he's like the boss now of Jabba's palace. It gives this persona of like, okay, now I'm the kingpin. You know what I mean? So can you guys elaborate on that? Like, again, there's this humanistic part to all the characters, you know what I mean, in terms of character development. And I would even stress, I'm backtracking here, but just roll with me. When we think about Luke Skywalker, for instance, in the sequel trilogy, and you hear a lot of fans are like, you know what, man, that's not the same Luke, you know, that I knew in Return of the Jedi. Luke wouldn't do this, yada, yada, yada. You're absolutely right. It's not that same Luke. He's changed. Think about it. It's been 30 plus years. Anyone would, you know, be totally different in your ideals, and, you know what I mean? Physically, you're going to be different the way you think. That's just human. So in terms of Boba Fett, can you guys elaborate on that idea in terms of like character development and kind of going into the book of Boba Fett with what we know this far? Like, what do you guys think we're going to see with his character? Star Wars guy, I'll let you kick it off. And hopefully my question makes sense.
So your question is like, do you think we're going to see the same effect with Luke Skywalker, where we're going to see a different Boba Fett?
Initially, yeah. Yep.
I would definitely say so. Already, it seems like his way of going about things, he has a code. He kind of reminds me of like a mafia guy. Like, you know, if you deserve it, you're whacked. But if not, then I'll leave you be. You know, he's not like totally out to kill everybody. But
yeah,
I think he's definitely going to be have hold on, I can't get my words together. Before you joined, Sal, I just messed it all up.
No, you're good.
Um,
But you're onto something that does make sense. Keep going.
yeah, he's been through so much, especially since the Sarlacc pit. Of course, he's going to be totally different than the Boba that we've seen in the movies and other ways. But I think he's going to be better. He's maybe not going to be 100% a good guy, but he's going to be a lot better, and he's definitely going to be changed. He's going to be more focused on, I don't know what, but something tells me that. But that's my take on it.
For sure. You mentioned there's something you mentioned that made me think of something. So you guys remember when we watched the gallery of the Mandalorian? And I can't remember the director's name, but he talked about, you know, that scene when we first seen Boba come back and he was fighting and it was badass. And he said, you know, in terms of fighting styles, like between, you know, if, you know, Din Djarin was kind of like, you know, this smooth gunslinger Western type of guy, Boba had to be like a barbarian, you know. So when we think of that, just with their fighting styles alone, it makes me think of their characters too, and some of the choices, you know, that I wonder that will make, where it's like, again, I think, Guy, you're onto something too, where like, he definitely seems like he's on this spiritual journey, like he's changed. But at the same time, I think we're going to have those moments where it's like conflicting, you know what I mean? Because it's Boba Fett. And I feel like for his character, when I'm just looking at the fighting styles, but like between him and Din, it's like there's such a difference. But then character-wise, it's like I feel like we're definitely gonna probably see something like that too, where we're gonna be having moments where it's like, oh, you know, that's kind of messed up, Boba. Why'd you have to do him like that? Or you know what I mean? Like I'm sure we'll have those moments because again, it's Boba Fett. Now, Sal, for you, can you elaborate kind of on that idea too of like, what do you think we're gonna see with this guy? That's, I mean, again, it's been what, 30 plus years? No, not yet. Sorry. It's been, because The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So with that amount of time, with what you know so far about Boba Fett, what's your initial idea of like, you know what, I kind of think this is what we could possibly see from this guy. What do you think?
So the way you interpret characters is obviously your opinion. That's how you see it, and that's how it's interpreted. And a lot of people I've come across, they like to believe that Boba in the original trilogy was always this big bad. And by most cases, he is. I would list him as an antagonist. I wouldn't say he's a villain, but he's definitely an antagonist.
Yep.
I think that the only reason Boba worked with the Empire was because there was some level of insurance behind it that he was actually going to get paid if he did what he did. Rather than doing the Rebel Alliance. So that's why I think people associate him with being evil, is because he was with the Empire. But I agree with Star Wars guide there. He says that after the Sarlacc, we see kind of the different Boba. And I agree with that. After the Sarlacc, you know, Boba is pretty much different when we see him in Mando.
Yeah.
I think it takes it to another level because he repaints his armor, which is something out of character for Boba, because he likes his armor to be like that. It shows his, you know, his years going through bounty hunting, all the like kind of like trophy scratches he got and stuff.
Yeah.
But for him to repaint it that specific color, that's almost reminiscent of like the earlier like Mandalorian days. If you pull from Open Seasons, the Django comic, you know, the higher ranking Mandos would wear like silver, which is Din Djarin's case, and the lower ranking ones would be like green with like some form of secondary like red or yellow color kind of thing. And so I thought it was interesting that they repainted his armor not only to match his old armor, but to also kind of go with the older Mandalorian like color code. So I don't know, it's interesting because I definitely think he's going to have a character change, but I don't see him becoming like a big bad again. But I also don't see him becoming like a good guy. Like, oh, I'm here to clean up the crime syndicates. Like, no. That's not Boba either. But
it's got to be some, for sure.
And I think Sal's pretty spot on with that. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm from what Sal was just saying, I think it's kind of like when people want to imagine Luke as turning to the dark side. You know, it's very, very hard for us to see it. But if it were to ever happen, let's say a comic, which let's just say, imagine it just happened right now. People would be like, no, that's not Luke. There's no way. Just because we've seen that mold of him, we know how he acts in the movies, and then when it's something different, everyone's kind of just shook a little bit. So I could definitely agree with you on Sal. And I know that you just met us, and you don't really know like how our ideas work or things like that, but we're both very open-minded people. And if you disagree with something, hey, it's all good. We can have a discussion about it, because as you know, the Star Wars community, there's a good portion of it that's like, hey, I'm right and you're wrong, no matter what, to the death. And
Yeah.
that's not what we're about.
No, not at all. Not at all, man. Yeah. And I love being able to hear yeah, Guy is hitting on the nail, man, where we love hearing other people's perspectives. But you bring up a good point too, like about, Boba's character, where it's like it would be totally out of character for him to be like, now I'm gonna clean things up. But then at the same time, it's like there's got to be some purpose. Again, it's called the Book of Boba Fett. So again, I think that plays on the narrative too. Kind of getting into the show now, of kind of their narrative of how they've done the Mandalorian. Where it's all in chapters, not necessarily a season. And I think now we get to get into Boba's life and kind of see some things now. Breaking things down, I do want to get to scene by scene when we like theorize about the first episode, but I was just looking through something in terms of like, Fennec Shan, and I guess both you guys can comment on this. What do you think her role is, in this show, and why is it that, she's like kind of being loyal to Boba Fett? I mean, I know he saved her life, so I mean, maybe that's it, but feel free, both of you guys, feel free to elaborate on that. Like, what do you think we're going to see from her, in the Book of Boba Fett, and why is it that she's so loyal, because I mean, hey, he could fix her up and she like does one job with him and then splits off, but she seems to be staying by his side. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Go ahead.
I think it's a similar case of like Zam and Django, not necessarily like, depending on what you read about it, like a love interest. I think it has to do with the fact that it's debatable too, but I strongly stick by it. Yeah. Django and Boba were bounty hunters of their era. They were formidable. They were the well-known and best bounty hunters at their time periods, respectively. If some well-known bounty hunter comes up to you and you're kind of in that profession of doing like mercenary work, like Fennec Shan is, and there you go, you're like, yeah, like, that person just saved your life, I would stick with that person regardless of who it is. But if they're, if they're the best bounty hunter, I'd be like, yeah, no, I feel like I have a good shot with you. Like, yeah, I don't know.
100% agreed. Guide, what do you think, man?
Yeah, Sal's spot on. I think it's not a love interest. It's more of like a loyalty thing, especially if someone saves your life. You owe them quite a lot. Yeah. It could, depending on the person, it could be a financial payoff. Like, hey, you saved my life. Here's a few million credits. Or it's like, right, hey, I'm loyal to you until something happens. So, yeah, it can kind of just go anywhere from there. But now, one quick thought. You said the Book of Boba Fett. I instantly thought, like, I always overthink things, but I think for like a quick little prediction, I'm probably far off from this, but it may be like a special book to him, kind of like a diary, and he kind of just goes over updating everyone on what happened in between the movies up until the Mandalorian. It could be something like that, or just playing off of that to the future, but I don't know.
Which, and playing on that narrative, I think you could be onto something, man. By the way, we have 10 minutes left on our show, but dropping into that idea, that I think could be really interesting, because how many questions do we as fans have? Like, all right, so what happened? Like, how did you survive the Sarlacc pit and all these different things? I personally want to see that first episode diving into that moment, like him in the Sarlacc pit, and like what happened after that, you know what I mean? Like, how did he get so scarred up, from it and all that jazz? How did he lose his armor, and adding Cobb Vanth into that as well. So all those little pieces, I think would be really interesting. And then another thing that I want to see, particularly in the show, is I feel like he's going to get the band back together, man. The group of bounty hunters. For what purpose, I don't know. Because mind you, like the Empire has been, fallen and gone for years. Are there shadows of it that still exist? Yeah, obviously, like with Moff Gideon and a few other Imperial folks. But the Empire in its whole it's gone. But I feel like we're gonna see like some of the other folks come back in like Bosk and a few other people. I think it would be really cool. But let me know what you guys think. Guide, why don't you kick that off? Do you think we'll be able to see some of those old bounty hunters come in on this? And also to add to that question, what do you think we're going to see in episode number 1?
I really loved your idea for episode number 1. I can already hear the Sarlacc pit, him escaping, because I don't read the comics, obviously, but Sal, you could probably elaborate on this as well. Isn't there conflicting, like 2 different scenarios where he's saved by Dengar, A, and then B, he uses his rocket to then blow aside into the Sarlacc and to escape? Is that right?
I think it's all one thing. If I remember correctly, he uses it to get out, like his jetpack to get out of it, and then he's kind of like almost half dead laying next to this dead Sarlacc, and that's when Dengar comes in. But I could be wrong.
Okay.
Wow.
So I can't even remember what I had for dinner like 3 days ago. So I just random memories. But that's where I think I would love to see it go. Just right. The first episode, action packed, seeing what they bring to life there.
Yeah.
That's about all I've got for that. But you can go ahead, Sal. I'd love to hear what you got.
I could have sworn that when Mando season 2 was coming out, when Boba met up with Din, that there was going to be some quick flashback, and it was going to briefly explain how he got out of the Sarlacc, but we didn't get that.
Yeah.
So that makes it confirmed pretty much that we're getting that in Book of Boba, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think they might take it up a step and do like an alternate perspective of the Battle of Carkoon from Boba's point of view of everything. Leading up to him getting in, and then like a cut to him leaving the Sarlacc, or like some in-between shots of him in the Sarlacc. I think at this point we can pretty much expect some explanation as to how he got out of it, because that was like briefly mentioned by a passing comment by I forgot his name already, the guy wearing Boba Fett's armor before him.
Cobb Vanth.
Cobb Vanth, it was briefly mentioned about like a dead Sarlacc thing, and that was about it. And I was like, that's not a good enough excuse.
Yep. Now, and it's funny, you just mentioned something too, Sal, that made me think. I'm sure you guys are probably seeing this around. There's like, I think they have one out for New Hope as well, but this is Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. And Sal, you mentioned something that made me think like, this could be, because there's a moment with, mind you, this is 40 stories celebrating 40 years of, the movies. But you also get a moment with Boba Fett, in this book, and some of the other bounty hunters too. And I wonder if it could be a thing like that too, where you're like, yeah, it is a flashback to Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi moments, but from Boba's perspective, on certain things that have happened.
Yeah.
Which I think, and I mean, you could bring in Daniel Logan, right, to do some of that stuff, which would be cool to, still use him, I think, initially. But yeah, as you said that made me think like, yeah, I feel like obviously, him surviving the Sarlacc pit, that is, again, his perspective. But I wonder if we're bringing in, other bounty hunters, I feel like you would have to dive into some of those earlier moments, which I think would be really cool. But yeah, it's a lot to be excited for, man, for the Book of Boba Fett. The show comes out, what is it? Yeah, December 2021. So we have that. We also have, we are in the midst of Bad Batch, and we'll be seeing Fennec Shan in there, which I think is going to be really interesting to see her, a younger Fennec Shan, and what she was up to during that time as well. So there's a lot to be excited for. But guys, we are at 4 minutes on our show. Anything else that you want to leave our viewers with before we end?
Helmet.
Yes. I don't know if you guys can see mine, but one of them back there. Yeah, helmet. I know Star Wars Guide actually has the white Boba Fett helmet.
Like the prototype one.
Yeah.
I was so lucky to get that one. They were selling for such a high cost, and now I don't see them on the market as much.
Yeah.
But I got it in the closet there.
Well, we have Sal here. He's on TikTok as well. Has a phenomenal page. Man, I've been following you for a while, and your stuff is incredible, and it's so cool to be able to chat with other creators. You know, that's what me and Star Wars Guide love to do. We love to bring folks in our community onto the show and just collaborate and get perspective and talk and geek out. But I've been following your page for a while, man, and just to see the stuff that you do, and you've been on this app for a while. Anything that you want to share with fans, with viewers, other young people who are Star Wars fans that want to start a TikTok or YouTube page, what's some advice you would give them?
Definitely, and this goes hand in hand with doing cosplay, definitely do your research. You know, if it's as simple as just watching what other people do or things like that, it helps in the long run, because you can go in with zero information and not know what you're doing, but with even a simple amount of research, it can get you so far, because you'll learn so many slight little things that you probably never would have even seen or even heard of.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, man. I appreciate that.
Very well
and
said.
I have one random question. How long does it take to get in the mall, Steph?
Oh, that's like an hour process of making.
Oh, man.
It's terrible.
Star Wars Guy, go. You were about to say something. Sorry, I cut you off, and then I'll have you close this out, man.
Oh, no, it's all good. I was just saying that it was well said by Sal.
Yeah. No, dude, we're happy to have you on, and it's so cool to meet the man behind the other helmets and horns. So we're happy to have you on, man. Guys, if you haven't already, please go and follow Sal, Dented Helmet. He's on TikTok. Give him a follow. And I believe are you on YouTube as well?
No, I'm not.
You're not.
I've thought
but
about
you're on
it, but
Instagram
no.
and TikTok. So
Yeah.
Please go and follow him. You will have a good time. I see you on my For You page all the time, man. And I try to do that every now and then. I'm just throwing that out there. So, but I love your page. Keep killing it, man. We're happy to have you on the show. And as well as myself and Star Wars Guide, you guys know where to find us. Here, I'm going to pull up Star Wars Guide. He's my buddy. I spelled his name wrong. There's an I in Guide. He can't speak today. I can't spell. That's why we're friends. We help each other out. So, Star Wars Guide is on TikTok as well. Be sure to follow him. And you guys know me, DadaLorian. I'm on there and on Instagram and YouTube as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next video. Peace.